This is a challenge you are going to work in this lunch. And the challenge is issued by our speaker today, who has basically said, I want to hear many questions. And so if you imagine him as a Stradivarius violin that you have managed to get into your possession, you have to play that instrument. So don't sit here thinking that the dessert's the next big thing you have to worry about. You don't get out of this room. There are people standing at the doors already. You don't get out unless you have asked a meaningful question or become a sponsor of next year's event. Marnie appreciated that comment. Briefly, before I start on introducing the speaker, I'd like to say a few words, especially to our friends from the Niagara Peninsula and the people who may not be familiar with the organization that I'm proud to represent. The mission of the Erie County Industrial Development Agency is to provide the resources that encourage investment, innovation, growth, and global competitiveness, thereby creating a successful business atmosphere that benefits the residents of the region. We have been proud to be involved in a number of different programs. I think in the last 5 years, I would say it has been one of the most innovative periods that our organization has ever experienced, thanks to an extremely competent staff, but thanks even more to people like Marnie, the university, and other people in the community like the Angel Group who have challenged us and have brought out the best in us. So I challenge you. You, as I say, you're not going to get out of the room cheaply. Think about what you're going to do to make this dream and vision we all have come true. To introduce Hatim, I had a chance to talk to him for a few minutes just before this lunch started. And I will tell you that I instantly liked the individual. In the space of 5 or 10 minutes of questions, I found him to be extremely perceptive, an exciting and energetic person. You all can read the bio, but I will give you a few snippets of things that he mentioned to me. He and his wife don't exactly see eye to eye on his bungee jumping activities. I guess the one at Victoria Falls may have started the discussion. The one he's planning for New Zealand may advance the discussion because he has apparently been challenged by some of his friends in New Zealand to jump the 450 feet down in New Zealand. And I'm sure his cardiac surgeon is not one of his biggest fans. But you know, when you look beyond the words that are in this bio that's in front of you, you see here a man who represents the soul of what we are trying to do today. Someone who takes risks, knowing they are risks, who has a wonderful attitude towards people and his family, and who represents the very best speaker I think we could have gotten today to get us energized and focused on what is coming in this area, I hope, in the way of entrepreneurial capital and an ecosystem. So I think this is a rare privilege. Please take advantage of it. Do not treat him as an honored guest. Treat him as you would treat your son coming home from college and you really want to know what he did. So ask. Yes, I've had two. I've had two sons, the 5-year Johnny Walker Fellowship and the 5-year Honey Brown Lager Fellowship were both of them. Please treat him as a friend, as a consigliere, as that son back from college, and it is a distinct pleasure to introduce Hatim Tiabji, and I knew I'd mispronounced it, I'm sorry, to address you. If we stay here 4 hours, I don't think you will fully exhaust this man's knowledge, so take advantage. This is a wonderful opportunity. Hatim?
Good afternoon. And Al, thank you for that very kind introduction. In terms of framing my remarks, I'm going to pick up where Al left off. And he was talking about my penchant to bungee jump. What I really want to talk about is not so much bungee jumping, but related to entrepreneurship. But there's a phrase I've used from time to time in terms of the companies I've run or people I've talked to that basically embodies what it takes to do the world's highest bungee jump, and it equally embodies what it takes to be a true entrepreneur and to start a company. And that is that courage, which is what we all need. Courage is not the absence of fear. People have asked me, you're right at the edge and you're going to jump. You must be very courageous. And I said, I wasn't courageous at all. I was terrified. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to act in spite of it. And if you think about that for a minute, and you're going to start your company, you've got a cushy job somewhere, you don't have to feel bad because you're scared. In fact, if you weren't scared, you wouldn't be human. Entrepreneurship has assumed an almost mythic state, whipped up by the popular media. And the popular media will only generally talk about all of the successful ventures. But true entrepreneurship is as much about failure as it is about success. In the venture capital world, and I've been in that world now for the last 25 to 30 years, one big success often offsets a multitude of failures. So the first big challenge for entrepreneurs is to, in launching your company, in most cases, is to raise the seed capital, to raise the funds. And you face venture capitalists, some of them with operating experience, some with no operating experience, and many of them will tell you that your baby, quote unquote, is ugly. They will tell you it will never work. They will give you the 10 good reasons why it won't work. And every one of those reasons is correct. But if you have the courage, if you believe, you will say, you're right. I will make sure that I counter those 10 reasons with actions and the like. But let me give you the 2 reasons why I believe it will work. And I've certainly been there many times. So after having told you why it won't work, then you will go through a hiatus when they will neither say yes, neither will they say no. They will come up with every reason to say no, but they will not give you a clear answer. And when they finally say yes, you're on your way. So the comment is, this is not an easy game. And the probability that the first time you approach an investor, the probability that you will succeed the first time, it happens, but it's very rare. And so the key point is that you don't give up. I think another key point is that many young entrepreneurs look upon raising money as a badge of success. They say, look, I raised 10 million. Somebody says, well, you're a piker, I raised 15. The guy who raised 10 million, built his company and monetized it, is far better than the guy who raised 15 or 20 because he suffers less dilution. And so the real key is raise as little as possible and make do with it. Bootstrap it, as opposed to getting yourself to a point where you just end up diluting yourself terribly. So you've raised the capital. Now you have your company that you've started. And perhaps the investors may ask you, perhaps they won't. But the seminal question is, what are you trying to achieve? Irrespective of which industry you're in, irrespective of which geography you're trying to conquer, the key fundamental questions you have to answer before you do anything is, what is your vision? What do you want to build? What values do you hope to instill in your people? What values do you hope to instill? That's the kind of thinking that's got to precede any operational action. What I, as an investor and an old operating guy, would like to hear when I ask those questions is, I would like to hear the entrepreneur telling me, we are going to change the way people live. We are going to create a new market, a new industry. We are going to create a culture to share a commitment to excellence. More often than not, I'm sad to say, I have heard I rather than we. What I have heard more often than not, in terms of what are you trying to do, what are you trying to achieve, I have heard, I'm doing this because I'm going to take the company public. I'm going to sell the company to the highest bidder. I'm going to make a lot of money. The question, ladies and gentlemen, we have to ask is this how we want to live our lives? Taking rather than giving. Focusing on ourselves rather than on others. Now let me be crystal clear. I'm not being hypocritical in the sense of saying that it is wrong to aspire for success. I'm not being hypocritical to say that it is wrong to aspire to achieve wealth. What I am saying is that should not be the be-all, end-all. So you step back and you say, what is one's personal definition of success? What is it at the end of the day that really makes us happy? Is it money? Is it power? Is it love? Is it family? And the sad part is that in many cases, money and power haunt so many entrepreneurs. Let me share with you a very specific example of that malaise. Even for those with exceptional talent and drive, money seems to have become the central point of it all. The poster children of the new economy are people like Jim Clark, the founding genius of Netscape, who is vividly portrayed in Michael Lewis's book, The New Thing. Despite his impressive resume, Clark comes across as a man who is stuck on a monetary treadmill. He seems addicted to running after more and more, and then more still, without ever stopping to ask why. Late in the book, Michael Lewis describes a scene in which he presses Jim Clark on this very issue. Earlier, Clark had said that he would retire after he became a, quote, real after-tax billionaire, unquote. At that point in time of the interview, Clark was worth $3 billion. So the question was asked, what are your plans for retiring? Clark replied, I just want to have more money than Larry Ellison. I don't know why. But once I have more money than Larry Ellison, I will be satisfied. But Lewis pressed further. In about 6 months, he postulated, Clark would surpass Ellison in terms of net worth. Then what? Did Clark want more money than, say, Bill Gates? Oh no, Clark replied, waving the question aside. That will never happen. A few minutes later, the conversation had turned to other matters, and he came clean. You know, he said, just for one moment, I would kind of like to have more than Bill Gates. Just for one tiny moment, he said. And you know how that goes. One tiny moment leads to the next and the next. And before you know it, unless you watch yourself, you could be consumed with an unhealthy obsession. And I think the real key point here for entrepreneurs is sometimes not a desire to succeed, which is nothing wrong, but an obsession with money and power can lead to confusion between personal and professional priorities. And it's that confusion that is extremely important to be watching for. In talking about that potential confusion, I talked about Jim Clark. Let me now talk about myself. In not so flattering a light, I might add. Many of us justify the long hours at work on the grounds that we are doing it for the family anyway. After all, the hard work and the corresponding financial reward today will be able to buy us all the time we need to spend with the family tomorrow. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a mirage. You never recapture the time that you have deferred. And happily, I speak from personal experience. During my professional career, my work came first. I traveled more than 200 days a year. When it was time to be with my wife on vacation, I would be conducting a sales review in a foreign country. When it was time to be with the children at the weekend game, I would be planning a new product launch. When it was time to be with the family for special events, I would be traveling on business. I read a column on this subject by Sue Schellenberger, the work and family columnist at the Wall Street Journal. circa December 17th, 1999. Sue's column was titled "The Tomorrow Trap," and I could almost feel that she was writing about me. She touched on a subject that most of us experience every day, the deferral of private time for the family because there is work to be finished at the office, an email to be written, a business call to be made. Schellenberger wasn't discussing this problem from an academic perch. She was writing about the high cost that she paid for deferring private time. For years, she had postponed a vacation on her father's farm in Michigan. For years, she had intended to present him with a collection of memories of the times that they had shared with loved ones. For years, she had deferred giving him a copy of her first published book, dedicated to him with eternal respect and gratitude. Suddenly, her father passed away. It took his death to teach me how ingrained it is in all of us to have the unconscious habit of living in the future. The unconscious habit of living in the future. A habit that can be a powerful asset in the realm of finance or one's career, but is often toxic when applied to human relationships. Sue concluded poignantly, taking the lesson of my father's death to heart, I am consciously slowing my life's pace. Now and then, when I find myself in a peaceful moment, relishing a sweet remark from one of my children, the fragrance of a wet forest, or the beauty of a field of wheat swaying in the wind, the words I wish I had spoken to my father pop into my head. The words that I wish I had spoken to my father pop into my head. I am ready now, Dad. I'm ready to spend more time. There is, of course, no answer. I'm reminded of a dialogue between a Brazilian theologian and the Dalai Lama. The theologian, Leonardo Boff, asked the Dalai Lama what the best religion is, fully expecting the answer to be Tibetan Buddhism. The Dalai Lama responds, the best religion is the one that gets you closest to God. It's the one that makes you a better person. The dialogue continued, and the Dalai Lama concluded the dialogue with this piece of very sage advice. Take care of your thoughts, because they will become words. Take care of your words, because they will become actions. Take care of your actions, because they will become habits. Take care of your habits because they will form your character. Take care of your character because it will form your destiny. And your destiny will be your life. There is no religion higher than the truth. There is no religion higher than the truth. So what is the truth? Money comes and goes. Human relationships are unique and irreplaceable. Most precious among them is love of family. Years ago, an interviewer asked Ross Perot, the founder of ADS and the erstwhile independent candidate for president in the 1992 election, clearly an extremely accomplished individual by any measure. The interviewer asked Perot whether he had lived a successful life. Now, by almost any normal measure of success, I don't mean real measure, I meant normal measure, Perot had been very successful. Perot answered, I will have to wait for my children to grow up before I can answer that question. My two boys, Salim and Abizer, and my wife, Duria, have always been and continue to be the anchor of the family amid the swirling tides of my professional life. Thanks largely to my wife, our sons are the men they are today. So unlike Ross Perot, I am able to answer the question of whether I have lived a successful life. To me, my boys and my wife embody the true meaning of my success. So let me then close by sharing with you the proudest moment of my life. The proudest moment of my life. There is no question that I was very proud when I jumped over the edge and came back alive. But what I'm about to share with you transcends even that feeling. The proudest moment of my life occurred in February 1995. Duria, my wife, and I were on a boat in Sydney, Australia, hosting the President's Club Award dinner for the company I ran at that particular point in time. I always looked forward to this event, given that it was a wonderful opportunity to recognize our best and brightest. The last award would traditionally be the salesperson of the year, who would always be presented with a golden Rolex President. I presented this award, and we were ready to break up for cocktails and dinner. At that point, I said there was one more person whom I wished to recognize. There was pin-drop silence. Everyone could see the emotion in my face. I continued, ladies and gentlemen, there is one individual who deserves special credit for our success. Someone whose contributions have never been publicly acknowledged. This individual has been and continues to be pivotal to our success. Then I paused for what seemed like an eternity. Nobody in the room knew what I was going to say next. Nobody. Very quietly, I said, would Duriya Tiabji please come up to the podium? The room went completely silent, then spontaneously burst into a standing ovation. Duriya was stunned. She walked slowly to the stage, climbed the steps, came to the podium. I hugged her with gratitude. The standing ovation continued. There was not a dry eye in the room. And therein lies the story of who we are, what we created, and what has truly endured. Thank you for your time.